Rise and shine. This is your morning Buzzcast for Monday, February 24th. I'm Austin Karp, here to start your final week of February. That's right, a sixth of the year has flown by. That means March Madness is just around the corner. The ACC men's basketball tournament is here in my hometown of Charlotte. Can't wait to catch a game or two at that event. Let's start things off with some ownership news. First, up in the land of 10,000 lakes, it looks like Justin Ishbia, brother of Suns owner Matt Ishbia, will not be the next owner of the Minnesota Twins. That was something that looked like it could be done by MLB opening day, but news emerged over the weekend that Ishbia was moving on from a pursuit of the Twins in favor of increasing his minority share that he has in the Chicago White Sox. That move might come with a potential path toward full control of the club in the future. So this obviously forces the Twins and Allen & Co., which is handling the sale of the team for the Pohlad family, kind of back to the drawing board. They say there were a number of interested buyers, so we'll see if some names start to emerge in the coming days and weeks that might take over the Minnesota Twins. But it's also another wrinkle for the future of the Chicago White Sox on the south side. The team has been looking for public funds for a new ballpark for a while now, something that Illinois legislatures were kind of lukewarm about in the fall. The White Sox's lease at Rate Field ends in 2029. There's also an option year in there for 2030. So there is a little bit of time. But Illinois, the state, is also focused on getting a Bears venue done. And now you inject some questions about the future of White Sox ownership. Jerry Reinsdorf obviously owns both the White Sox and the Bulls in the Windy City, but his son, Michael, only has a president title with the NBA club. So lots to answer there, lots to pay attention to with ownership of not just the Twins, but also the White Sox. Sticking with MLB, it was late last week that ESPN and MLB made public that the existing media rights deal was going to end between the two sides after this season, killing the final 3 years of that deal. But a source told my colleague Mike Mazzio heading into the weekend that the opt-out was not so much mutual as it was ESPN's call, another fiscally financial call, I guess, by Jimmy Pitaro and the company to really not overspend on sports rights. That source also told Mazzio that ESPN does remain open to working something out with the league, just not at that figure of $550 million annually for 30 regular season games, a wild card round, and the home run derby. ESPN may still want to be in the baseball business, just at a lower price. Now, MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred was in a tough spot here. He did not want to take another step back on an overall media revenue number. Does that mean MLB could pursue a path similar to what NASCAR accomplished in its last media rights deal? We're talking about multiple large national media partners, each having a smaller piece of the pie, but much broader exposure for the sport. We've seen baseball not have a problem taking that sort of approach in the last couple of years. They've struck deals with the likes of Apple TV Plus, with Roku. So another thing to pay attention to, what kind of strategy is MLB going to deploy with its media rights? As for ESPN, there is, in fact, no Sunday night baseball in 2026. So look for the net to move with maybe more NHL postseason games in that window. And then over the summer months, you can get some NCAA in there, maybe some College World Series. Also, WNBA games opens up a primetime spot for those games in the summer months. While many of those aren't going to get the viewership per se that Sunday night baseball has been able to average every year, they don't cost nearly as much as those MLB rights were costing. But again, ESPN and MLB may come back to the table. Ask the NHL what it was like when it left ESPN airwaves before coming back and the impact that ESPN can have on your sport. Now, could a one-off tentpole event like the Home Run Derby end up on a place like Netflix? Sure, why not? Apple also has that deal with MLB. Prime Video has a relationship, but tensions are high right now between ESPN and MLB. Let's see that cool down. My friend Chad Finn of the Boston Globe, I think, summed up the future well in saying that no NBA on TNT, no MLB on ESPN. That just seems like crazy talk a few years ago, and this is the future we may be eyeing next year. Speaking of hockey on ESPN airwaves, the Four Nations face-off final, that's Canada's overtime win over the United States on Thursday night. That was an eyebrow raiser for me in terms of the viewership number. 9.3 million viewers just here in the United States. That is crazy. Would not have predicted a number that high had I put out a number. That's better than any NHL game on record. Obviously, a caveat there, the NHL sets its record books back to 1994. Nielsen did a major metric recalculation back then. The best number before this for the NHL in those record books dating back to 94 was 8.9 million. That's what NBC drew back in 2019 for Game 7 of the Blues-Bruins Stanley Cup Final. Yes, there was a Canadiens-Blackhawks Game 7 Cup Final, 1971. That did around 12.4 million viewers on CBS, but the NHL doesn't really like to use that number for whatever reason. The point, though, is that this was a fantastic success for the NHL, for the NHLPA. This number for the final was essentially what Army-Navy football got this past season, and the event was more than ample evidence that it was a sufficient replacement for the All-Star game. Even that first USA-Canada game, that drew 4.4 million. If you look back at some NHL All-Star game numbers from the past years, the league hadn't seen any of its All-Star games reach 4.4 million since 1998. Another big winner in this looks to be NBC, as this Four Nations face-off event likely created some anticipation for the return of NHL players at the Milan Cortina Olympics a year from now. One idea I kind of thought interesting being thrown out was that MLB could think of borrowing this. Think about having a World Baseball Classic, not in spring training, but in the middle of the season. Players have warmed up, they're in their prime of the season. Could MLB do what NHL did here? Just some food for thought. And another league that has to be paying attention to All-Star Weekend is the NBA. My colleague Tom Friend looks at that in this week's magazine. A couple of other notes to get you going on your Monday. Issues continue to persist with the expansion NWSL club in Boston. Linda Henry, wife of Red Sox owner John Henry, is backing out from that ownership group. Her exit is the latest setback for the club, which also fumbled its name unveiled just a few months back. Hal Steinbrenner again said the Yankees could be in favor of an MLB salary cap, albeit with a floor for spending among all clubs. The Yankees haven't led baseball in payroll since 2013, but have paid luxury tax in 20 of 22 seasons since the current tax was put in place. That's a total of $452 million. Collective bargaining is going to begin in around a year for an agreement to replace the 5-year CBA between the MLBPA and the league, and that expires December 2026. Buckle up for those negotiations. Netflix has been on a roll lately with its sports docuseries drops. I watched the rest of Court of Gold with my kids over the weekend. Such a good series. We had director Jake Rogel on the SBJ Sports Media Podcast on Thursday, so give that a listen if you haven't done so already. On Tuesday, the next Netflix documentary drops. That's Full Swing Season 3. Pretty good timing with all the news of a potential peace deal between the PGA Tour and the PIF coming. My colleague Josh Carpenter got a glance at that series. He's going to give us a review in the SBJ Media newsletter tonight. And Netflix doesn't slow down there. Next week, Season 7 of Drive to Survive. Can't wait to check that out as well. You have to respect the Braves, who continue to innovate in and around their ballpark. This time, my colleague Brett McCormick reports this morning that the team is adding a food hall at Truist Park ahead of the 2025 season. That's part of a larger remake of the right field portion of the 8-year-old venue. A 4,600 square foot outfield market will feature 8 food stalls serving a variety of local F&B options. That includes fare from concessionaire Delaware North. The Braves, which booked $339 million in baseball event revenue last fiscal year, had been scouting new local offerings for the food hall during this offseason. Those are going to be announced in the coming weeks. And kudos to San Diego FC, the league's 30th team that got its start on the road Sunday afternoon, knocking off the LA Galaxy, the defending MLS champions. That was 2-0. Reports had almost 1,000 San Diego FC supporters singing and cheering from the upper deck at Dignity Health Sports Park, part of a near sellout crowd of 25,224 in Carson, California. That was the third best attendance for an MLS home opener this weekend as the season kicked off, behind just 30,000 in Seattle for Sounders and Charlotte FC, and an eye-popping 65,520 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And since we're talking soccer attendance, the U.S. women's national team beat Australia in a She Believes Cup match on Sunday at State Farm Stadium in Arizona. 25,503 in attendance for that match. And finally, SBJ's Inside the Industry will debut Thursday, February 27th at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on SBJ's YouTube channel. SBJ's Inside the Industry is our new monthly show in conjunction with Monumental Sports and Entertainment that looks at the business trends shaping sports and the business of sports. Thursday's show includes Clippers owner Steve Ballmer discussing the brand new Intuit Dome, a look at how legendary Cowboys owner Jerry Jones transformed the NFL business model, and a sneak peek at the revitalization plans at Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. Again, SBJ's Inside the Industry debuts this Thursday, February 27th at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on SBJ's YouTube channel. Subscribe now to get notifications for this debut and all shows as they become available. So, that is your morning Buzzcast for Monday, February 24th. I'm Austin Karp. I hope everyone has a great start to their week. Make good choices out there, and I will speak to you all again soon.